Welcome to Astro Science Academy, and today in this video I'll be showing you guys on how to sketch exponential functions. Right, so now as you can see, we got the general formula which says f of x is equal to a times b to the power of x plus p plus q. Right, so now as you can see, we know that q represents the horizontal asymptote. Right, so for exponential graph, q, it will only have the horizontal asymptote, which is represented by q. Right, so now this x plus p over here, this plus p represented how many units this graph has been shifted. So about shifts, we're going to discuss that later on. Right, so now a is the coefficient. Right, so a can either be positive or negative. Right, so now b is actually how this affects the graph. Right, so whereby b should always be greater than what? 0. Right, so now b cannot be equal to 1. Right, that's the restriction. So now if b is greater than 1, it's an increasing function, so the shape of the graph will look like this. Right, so now b determines the shape of the graph. So if 0 is less than b is less than 1, right, it is a decreasing function. Right, so as long as your function is if b, the values of b is between 0 and 1, right, but it mustn't be equal to 0 or 1, right, so it must be in between over here. Are you seeing that? Right, so if it's in between there, so in most scenarios you'll find fractions over here. Right, so over here it will come in forms of fractions. Right, so now this is the shape of the graph. It will look in this way, and this graph will be known as a what? A decreasing function. So now we got certain steps that we need to know on how to sketch an exponential graph. So the first step is we need to always get the horizontal asymptote, right? And then we need to get our x and y intercept, right? And then the third step is to do what? Is to sketch. Right, so now let's start. So now as you can see in this question here, it says that sketch the graph of f of x is equal to 2 to the power of x. Right, so now let's analyze everything over here. So now I'm going to bring it down here. Therefore f of x is equal to 2 to the power of x. Now let's have a look. As you can see, a in this scenario, right, because we know the general formula is f of x is equal to a times b to the power of x plus p plus q. So now let's have a look. A in this scenario is 1, the outer coefficient here. It's not 0, it's 1. Right, b is 2. Right, so we can see that the shape of the graph is going to be an increasing function. Right, so x to the power of x plus p, so p is not there, that means p is 0. Right, so p is 0 plus q. We know it represents the what? The horizontal asymptote. Right, so q is not there, that means q is 0. So now remember, the first step is to get the what? The horizontal asymptote. So now we're gonna say HA, right? HA, you're gonna say y is equal to q. So now y is equal to 0 in this scenario. So we got our horizontal asymptote. Right, so now next step is to get the x and y intercept. Right, so x and y intercept. So now you're gonna get your x intercept. So now you're gonna say x intercept, and we know x intercept y should be equal to what? 0. So now you're gonna say y is equal to 2 to the power of x. Right, so let y is equal to 0, so 0 is equal to 2 to the power of x. So as you can see, this cannot be solved, so you're gonna say not applicable. Right, you're gonna leave it like that, and then you're gonna come for your y intercept. So now y intercept, you're gonna say x is equal to 0. Right, so now I'm going to say y is equal to 2 to the power of x. So now wherever this x, you're going to put 0, and then therefore this will be what? 1. So y is equal to 1, and then you're going to have 0 is to 1 as your coordinates. So now once you're done, now you can get, the next step will be the shape of the graph. So as you can see over here, we do not really need the negative side. Right, so now you can please use a ruler over here when you're working. Right, let's get the shape straight. So we got that, And remember, we don't really need the negative side, so we can have that, right? We can have that and that, right? So now for each block, I'll consider that to be 1, right? So for each block, so now I'll consider this to be 2, 4, 6, right? So now this will be -2, this will be -4, and this will be -6. And this over here will be 2, this will be 4, this will be 6, this will be 8, this will be 10, this will be 12, right? So now over here will be -2. So once you set up your table like that, that will be great. So now over here, now let's pick a different color for the shape. So now over here, now we need all right, now we need the y-intercept. So the y-intercept here is 0:1. So 0:1 is right here, right? So you're gonna put a dot over there. So now let's say you are in this scenario, you don't have any other point, right? And maybe you forgot these 2 steps over here, right? You forgot these 2 steps, you don't know the shape of your graph, right? I'll advise you to take your calculator and use your calculator for shape, right? So now, in order for you to get the shape, so you're gonna go to mode setup, and then you're gonna go to where it says table, right? So you're gonna press number 7, and then you're gonna say f of x, and then you're gonna say 2 to the power of, right? You're gonna press alpha x, right? So g of x means if you have a second function which you don't have. So you're gonna start with the smallest number, which is -6. Consider the x values, -6 all the way to +6, right? And then the step in between you're gonna consider to be 1, right? So now we have this, right? So now let's have this on our side. So now, as you can see, if x is -6, you can see it's 0,01, right? It's very low, it's almost down here, right? So now we don't need that, right? So you go to -4, it's a little bit low. Okay, go to -3. So but if you start with -1, as you can see, if you start with -1, it gives you 0,5, right? So -1 gives you 0,5. So you can put this right here, right? So you can put it right here. Now take this back. So now you're going to have, all right, so now as you can see, now 1 is actually 2. So right here we got that. Now let's take our calculator again, and we know 2 is 4. So when x is 2, y will be what? Y will be 4. So we got that right here, right? So we got that, right? So now you can see how the shape should look like, right? So now now let's go back up over here. For -2 is 0,25, right? So it's comes over here a little bit low like that, right? So we know that this x is our asymptote, right? The graph will never touch this place. So now you can sketch this properly over here, just like that, right? You can come up like that, and make sure you don't use a ruler, so your graph will look something like that, right? So yeah, you guys can draw something better, right? So you should be having something like that, easy as that. And this will be your function, right? So once you have something like this will be great, right? So this is how we sketch our exponential graph, right? So now guys, let's have a look at another example, right? So now we have another example like this, right? So now over here, as you can see, you are given everything, right? Everything is given over here, right? Because we know the general formula. Let's change the color. We know the general formula, which says f of x, right? F of x is equal to a times b to the power of x plus p minus q. So plus q, sorry. Everything here is given, right? A is 2, B is 2, P is -1, Q is -4, right? So everything is given. So now what are we going to do? So first thing, we need to get the horizontal asymptote, right? So let's get the first step. So horizontal asymptote, we know horizontal asymptote, you just say y is equal to q, right? So y is equal to q, we're gonna say y is equal to q is what? -4, right? That's it, you're done. Now the next step is to get your x and y intercept. So now we know x-intercept, we're gonna have to let y is equal to what? 0. So now f of x is equal to 2 times 2 to the power of x minus 1 minus 4, right? So now y is 0 is equal to 2 times 2 to the power of x minus 1 minus 4. Then what we're going to do, we're going to transpose this 4 this side, right? And then becomes a positive. So now to be 4 is equal to 2, right, times 2 to the power of x minus 1, right? Then what do we have to do? We need to remove this coefficient over here, right? So now we're going to divide this by 2, divide this by 2, cancel, cancel. 4 divided by 2 is 2 is equal to 2 to the power of x minus 1, right? So now this now to be 2 to the power of what? 1. So now this and that cancels out since it's got the same base, right? So now you have 1 is equal to x minus 1. So now transpose this side. So now to be 1 plus 1, which will be equal to what? X. So now over here you have that, right? So 1 plus 1, right? That will give us what? 2, right? Always use your calculator, right? 2. And that will be our answer as for x-intercept. So it will be 2 is to 0, right? So now let's get the y-intercept now, right? Y-intercept, we know y-intercept, we know x should be equal to 0, right? So now you're going to say f of x is equal to 2 times 2 to the power of x minus 1 minus 4. So now you're going to have f of x, right, is equal to 2 times 2, right, to the power of 0 minus 1 minus 4, right? So now, easy as that, you can just take your calculator quickly, right? So now you can punch this in. So now you're going to say 2 open bracket 2 to the power of, right, to the power of 0 minus 1, right, minus 4. No, sorry, let's take that down, and then you're gonna say minus 4 and equal to -3. So f of x or y, so now this will be 0 is to -3. So as you can see that we're gonna be needing a lot of negative side, right? So now you can start to sketch, right? Next step is to sketch. So now simple as that, right? So as you can see, you're gonna have that, and then we don't need much of the positive side, so we can put it like that over here, right? We have something like that, right? So now let's start. So for each block, we know we're gonna consider that to be 1, right? So now this will be 2, 4, 6, right? So now here also will be -2, this will be -4, this will be -6. So this will be, all right. So you set up your table like this, your Cartesian plane. So you know, as you can see, this is y and this is x. So now let's start to sketch now, right? So let's pick a different color. So now the first thing that you will need is the asymptote, right? The horizontal asymptote, which we know is y is equal to -4. So now let's start with that. So now we're going to put a dotted line, or horizontal dotted line, indicating that the graph will never touch here, right? So now you're going to put that, and also you're going to extend it this side, the negative side. You're going to extend this, so you're going to have something like that, right? So now once you're done having that, now you can come on to sketch. So now, as you can see, we need to put in the x-intercept. So we know the x-intercept is 2, right? 2 is to 0, and the other one is 0 is to -3. So since we know this is 0, this is 1, right? This is -2, -3 will be down here. You'll have something like that. So now we know that over here on our function, we can see that our b is 2. That means if b is greater than 1, it's an increasing function, right? We spoke about this is an increasing function, right? So if it's an increasing function, right, the shape of the graph will look like that, right? That will be an increasing function. So now we know the shape of the graph will be in this form, right? So make sure over here you guys do this properly and carefully, right? So now you should be having something like this, right? So you're gonna continue all the way to infinity, and you should be having something like this over here, right? Right, so on your graph you shouldn't be having double lines, right? So we should be having something like this, right? So now the other thing that is very important, your domain and range, right? So now, as you can see, domain over here can be x. X is an element of all real numbers with no restriction, because this graph will exist on the negative side of the x values and the positive side of the x values. But for the range, it has a not a restriction, but you can see the graph only exists when y is greater than what? -4. Because now if the graph is less than -4, the graph does not exist. So over here you're gonna say y should be greater than, you can't say equal to because the graph does not touch there, right? Greater than what? -4. And that will be our range, right? So we could have done the same thing up here, right? So range, domain over here would have been x is an element of all real numbers, and range, right, range would have been y is greater than 0. As you can see, the x-axis was the asymptote, right? So yeah, if you know all these key points, you're good to go, right? So thank you guys for attending, and this is how we sketch our exponential functions. And on our previous videos, guys, I showed on how to sketch the quadratic functions, linear functions, and hyperbolic functions, right? So please have a look at them, and thank you for attending, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.